What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Blues Note Show, brought to you by the STL Sports Crew. With me today, as always, the last couple shows is James and myself. How are you doing tonight, James?
I'm good, Brandon. How you doing, man? Good to be a Blues fan.
Good to be a Blues fan right now. I know the last time we had a show, it was a little bit before. I want to say a little bit before the Four Nations tournament thing. And I know we were going to try to have one afterwards and everything. And things kind of fell through for that one, but glad we were able to get one going today because since the Four Nations tournament, since our last show, we were not really doing that well in the standings. We were 8 or 9 points outside of the wild card race or even the playoff race. But, since the last time we had a show and even since the last time or since the Blues came back from the Four Nations face-off, it's been a completely different team. And today we're going to talk about some of the most recent games that have been kind of going on and even a little bit of the standings and seeing where the Blues are at in the current playoff push. Because, I don't know about you, but this team since Four Nations face-off is a completely different team than what we saw prior to the face-off, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Let's face it, they're on ever since the Four Nations tournament, they've gone 10-2-2. Like, they have changed everything around. Like you said, we were talking about them being way out of the playoff race. We're looking at signs of hope, like, well, see what happens next year. We got this, we got that. And then that 2 weeks focus this team. And, a lot of that, again, goes to the dedication of the team. And it goes to Montgomery, Jim, who's head coach, details the way he always talks about every time you hear him in a press conference, every time he talks to his players, he's, they're crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And now they're, locked into the final wildcard spot at the moment. 3 points up at the moment against their competitor. And that's a phenomenal thing to say, because not even a month ago we were thinking that. So
it's 4 points.
4 points. See?
Yeah. Yeah, because Calgary is at 77, and with the win tonight against Nashville, the Blues are at 81 points.
Okay. Wow. See?
So
that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, and in regard to that, for the Blues right now, it's crucial for them to hold on to as many points as they can because you got the Blues are at 72 games, Calgary is at 69 games, and Vancouver's at 70 games. So just in that little bit, if the Blues can continue this streak that they got going on and take as many points as they can leading up to the last 10 games of the season that they have left after tonight, it's going to be crucial for them if they want to stay in that second wild card spot.
Right, exactly, 100%. Because Calgary, those three, they picked those up in the last 10 days of the season. So where the Blues would be kind of in the downward part of this of their season, Calgary's got a lot more to go for. So it's like you said, it's crucial that not only do they get these points, but like every point counts from here on out. Now they've got that spot. Now it's theirs to lose. So it's just a matter of them getting every point they can in the next 10, 11 games they got. So it's you hate to say it's cliched, every point counts, but literally every point counts from here on out. Every game counts.
Oh, for sure. And I was looking at the schedule for kind of the remaining games that they have left in the season, and of the Calgary Flames, the Vancouver Canucks, I would probably still maybe put the Utah Hockey Club in the mix because they're only 6 points back of the Blues. But I mean, with the season, they've won their last 2 games, but I feel like all those those 4 teams that I just listed, including the Blues, out of the 3 other ones that I mentioned, St. Louis and Utah kind of have a little bit of the simpler season for the rest of the go. Vancouver and Calgary have a lot more playoff teams that are already in the mix, and playoff teams and bubble teams that are kind of right on the mix. And St. Louis is more on that stretch where they have maybe a couple of playoff teams remaining that they still have to play, but a lot of it is just teams that are either close to that playoff line or teams that are already out. So, I mean, in my eyes, you almost got to take advantage of every bit that you have left in this season, since they have the simpler of the schedules between those 4 teams.
Yeah, and you got to be careful with that though too, because even though they might have arguably the weakest schedule, that's the deceptive part, because teams that are definitely out of playoff spot, like a Nashville or Chicago, they're playing with pride, so they don't want to be this team that we just got trounced, 6-1, 5-1, whatever. They're going to put the forthright effort in there to beat and be a spoiler for some of these other teams like the Blues. Now, these 2 games that they've just played, one could be argued that it wasn't their best games, but they still squeaked out wins. And that's the sign of a good team on the rise, is when, even if you don't play your best, you're still winning, or you're darn close to winning.
Yep, of course. And I mean, a lot of that too, I think, has to attribute to the not just a lot of like the depth that they have, but I mean, yes, the depth is a big thing that the Blues have that contribute to a lot of these wins, but it's also the contributions that they're getting, not just from their forwards, but from their defensemen. I was taking a stat whenever they got back from the Four Nations face-off, and in their last 10 games, I think, of this prior to the Four Nations, they had, I think, 11 or 12 points from defensemen. And in that 15 games that they came back afterwards, I think they've been at relatively like 20-something points or so from defensemen. And just seeing that they've been really getting into the mix more and getting up into the ozone with the offensive players too, that's been a big help. I mean, it was a shame that Parayko got his injury like he did, because he's had a hell of a year this year. But whenever he got his injury, we've seen Fowler, we've seen Falk, we've seen Broberg. I mean, I can go down the list of the defensemen, but they've all been chipping in and really showing that they want to make this push, and they've been getting the points to show it.
It's really, that was the biggest surprise to me when I heard the news that Parayko was going to be out for the majority of the regular season. I thought, this team's good, but can they withstand that? I mean, Parayko was a borderline Norris Trophy candidate before that injury. But like you said, you're getting massive contributions from Calvin Fowler, who was arguably like the best deal that they've made in recent memory, picking up a defenseman of his caliber and being that good. Justin Falk has resurgence. He's got, I believe, he's pretty much a point per game player in the last 9 games.
Yep. And he got a goal tonight.
Yeah, he got a goal tonight. Like, he's playing a much better game. And I know some people have read online that they're still dogging him for little defensive lapses here and there, but suffice to say, the guy is playing phenomenal hockey, the best hockey he's played since being here, honestly.
Oh God, yeah, I would agree.
And also, let's not forget, Phil Broberg is still definitely a steal in the offseason. I mean, he's definitely matured into a good, solid defenseman, and he's so young. Just imagine what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years as he matures. And plus, you're getting great play from Matt Kessel was there, played a great game tonight. Tyler Tucker has been an absolute beast.
Yep.
For the back part, and of course, you can't beat Ryan Suter. Like the man, he's literally the Gandalf of the team, where he just doesn't die. He just keeps going and going.
Yep.
This, I give a lot of credit to this defensive team. The defense on this team is phenomenal right now. They're playing great hockey, much better than I expected, and it's a good sign. That tells you how much they're playing for each other and they're playing for this team. It's important.
Yeah, and I mean, just with all that being said, I mean, even the acquisitions that we made over the offseason, a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people really thought that how good Broberg and Holloway would have been like coming into the season for the Blues, with not seeing them getting a whole lot of playing time in Edmonton, and not really for sure how well they would gel with this team. But I mean, since coming in, we've seen Dylan Holloway progressively just get better and better and better. I mean, now it's almost to the point where if we're seeing him getting somewhere on the stat sheet, maybe once every game or every other game with some sort of points or some sort of contributions. And then, I mean, the same for Philip Broberg. I mean, those two arguably were probably the reason that we won the game against Vancouver the other night or a few nights ago, just because I think it was Dylan Holloway getting the game tying goal or the go ahead goal in the third period, and then Philip Broberg getting the overtime game winning goal. So, I mean, and even Cam Fowler's contributions to the team too have been huge. This year's acquisitions that Doug Armstrong has made have been so contributory to this team, making this stretch run in these last few games of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to always pat everything on the back of Doug Armstrong, but this was actually a very, I know a lot of people were kind of like, oh, I can't believe you signed, those guys that, the offer sheets and they got him. And some people even said it was an overpay. There were some pundits that said he overpaid for Broberg and Holloway.
Yeah.
And this ended up being, at the end of the season, if you go back and really rank the GMs in terms of moves, you got to give him some top 5 credit just for what he did, because he didn't make the big splash like what Nashville did or some of these other teams. No, but he filled holes in a team that, in the spots that were needed. And that's what a GM is supposed to do for your team. You see what needs to be filled and you do the best you can with it. And I mean, he's done it shockingly well, better than I expected. And, I've always admired Army and his work and his, that cutthroat GM style that he plays. And, and some people get ticked off about it. They don't like he does this or that. And, they cry because a player that played here, 6 years ago is, scoring 3 goals a season and they still, he's not a Blue, but hey, you know what? He's doing his best for the here and now of this team. That's what you got to give Army credit for.
Yep, of course. And I mean, just the fact that he was able to get Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg at the cost that he was getting them at. I mean, you got Dylan Holloway at, I think it was a 2.2 for 2 years, and then Philip Broberg for, I think, $6 million for 2 years. I mean, just those two contracts alone and how much they're helping this team, you're seeing them playing elite hockey, and they're contributing as much as they are. And just to be able to have them on the team for the amount of money that they are being given, and it helps out the team a lot, especially coming into the offseason where you're not sure what pieces are going to still be here, who you're going to be able to sign or not sign.
Right.
because I think we have a few RFAs coming up this season. I think I'm not exactly sure on the UFAs. I got to look it up again. But I mean, still, it's going to be a big factor when you're looking at some of those things, and even when the off season, once you're looking at, because coming into this draft, I think we have a first round draft pick and then a fifth round draft pick, and with where everything stands with our prospects already as it is, I don't know if you really want to look at much in the draft. You might want to try to pick up something more than maybe bolster your defense or bolster your offense. And maybe that's something that you can possibly use that draft pick to maybe bring an extra piece in to deafen your team that much more. Wouldn't you agree?
You know, the offseason is going to become very interesting. I do know that Studer's dad already hinted that he wants to come back, and that would be great. I'd love to see him come back to the team for at least another year. I believe Joel Hofer is still a restricted free agent. They haven't signed with a contract. They did. I know Neighbors was supposed to, but he signed an extension earlier this season. And when it comes to the draft, it's going to be. I know this draft isn't as deep as it was the last couple of years, so it's not that it's always bad to not have a second or third round draft pick, because your top goal scorer was a second round draft pick. That's now, but considering what you got in place of it, losing a second round pick and a third or fourth round pick for Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg because you signed them to offer sheets. That's your draft right there. You just technically redrafted Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. So, it's going to be an interesting time frame because it's a matter of who, what they need to address, where they need to go, and also who's gonna be here, that are the guys that you drafted in the last few years. Like, is Dvorsky going to stay up here next year? Is Jimmy Snuggerud going to be here? Is he going to go down, to the Thunderbirds? I don't know. So they're definitely going to have it, just like any offseason. They have questions that need answered, and we'll see what Army and Alexander Steen are going to be up to the task to do.
Yep. And I mean, you brought up a good point with Snuggerud and Dvorsky. Earlier today or yesterday, Dvorsky ended up getting brought up, recalled from Springfield. He ended up playing in the game today. I don't know exactly on the numbers he had, but I know he didn't. I don't think he got any points. But from what I could see of the game, it seemed like each shift he progressively got better and better as it went. Obviously, the first couple shifts he was, I imagine, a little bit nervous with it being his first game in the NHL and being with a team that's aggressively in a push for a playoff spot. It's got to be hard for a rookie to be coming in on his NHL debut on a playoff push run that this team is just going absolutely as hard as they can and trying to get wins. But it was good to see him getting a chance to play since Sundqvist was out. I think Buchnevich was out as well still with his illness. So, I mean, just letting them get the chance to come up and get those reps with the team I think it was good for him. And then obviously with Snuggerud, with him being in the college season still and going through the playoffs, they were saying that it won't be until probably the last 2 or so games of the season, depending on how the final college tournament goes. But with it being maybe 1 or 2 games before the end of the season, I don't think that they would have him really for any of the remaining games, but it would probably be something of off-season, probably signing that we see probably Snuggerud finally come into the team.
Right. But I think that's going to be a definite going to happen next year for him. He's at least going to be there at training camp and go from there. And you never know where players end up being. You remember back in 1819, Robert Thomas comes to the team. He's a highly touted prospect. He was 18 years old playing on this team,
Yep.
and he helps guide this team to a Stanley Cup win in his first season. And then, you fast forward, you got Jake Neighbors just a couple of years ago making his appearance in 19. And then, he played those 9 games and he got sent back down. Then he comes back and, he's been playing a heck of a good career so far. And, I give a lot of credit to the scouting team. They pick good players. They know where they draft, and they so far they've been doing a great job of scouting, picking up the right players that can fill those needs that are always something that a Blues team has to put in, and it's hard to do when you're a team that constantly usually drafts anywhere in the mid first round. Normally, this isn't a team that's it's not, you're not like an Oilers team for 10 years plus. They were in the top 10 in almost every draft, where they could get your McDavids, your Dreisaitl's, and all these significant players. The Blues have been. I've only seen them in the top 10 maybe 3 times in my lifetime, where they picked in the top 10 ever. That's but that goes to show you that it's rare for them to do it, so they have to make the most of these picks, and I think they've done a good job of it so far.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one thing too. That's since I've really paid attention to hockey and really paid attention to the Blues, I don't think we've really had a elite superstar on this team. I mean, we've had Tarasenko for the last, I think probably, I saw him come into the league right around 2012, 2011, something like that, whenever he got drafted by the Blues. And we saw him take off, and we other than him and maybe Brett Hall, or not Brett Hall, Wayne Gretzky, whenever he got traded to the Blues back in 95, 96, I mean, that was really the only superstar that I can really think of that the Blues have ever really gotten onto the team. It's just, and a lot of that I think is due to just, it's a blue collar team that you've gotten more middle ground players that you've always gotten into this city that have wanted to more or less play for the town, play for each other. And we saw it. And I know people get to the reference of the 18-19 and the season that had followed whenever they made it into the playoffs, but you're kind of really starting to see that grit again from this team since we came back from the nation's face-off, and you're almost starting to really see that grit to this team again, and that togetherness of the team that they had during that playoff push for those 3 or 4 years whenever they were doing really good. And I wonder if that's, hopefully they're going to be able to keep it going. And I think they got the right players to really keep up that type of play.
The most important thing that I've noticed with this team, and I'm not saying they're just like the Stanley Cup team, but that strong togetherness, playing the structured hockey that Jim Montgomery has preached about all since he's been here. They all play for each other, and you see it out there. Like every time one player is taken down in a dirty way, you got another player right on that guy. Like just like not tonight's game, but and today, today's game against the Predators, but yesterday against the Blackhawks, someone goes right after Braden Shen, and what happens? Jake Neighbors attacks him just like that, and gets in on the fight. Like that's what you want. Those players are for one another no matter what, and it's that's a testament to this team finally learned how to be a team together. For a while there, these guys weren't really standing up for one another, except for maybe a couple. For at least 3 or 4 years, you got Jordan Binnington being the guy who wanted to fight everybody because or Braden Shen, because those are the only 2 guys that would stand up for their teammates. And enough's enough. Now you got your Jake Neighbors and Nathan Walker's in there, and plus you get Tyler Tucker. Those are those glue guys that come in there, and there's others. I'm pointing those three out because they're the ones that seem to always be the ones that are ready to go after someone.
Always the one that get in the mix of the things.
Right, they're ready to mix it up, but instead of players getting turned away from that, those other players are feeding off that, and so you're not only getting Neighbors and Walker and those guys. Like, you're getting Kyrie, who gets in the middle of it if he needs to. Dylan Holloway has no problem getting his hands dirty if he has to. You get that. You get Booch Davis likes getting in the middle of it when need be, and that's a good thing because each player has each other's back, and that is that's the structure of what Blues hockey has been for decades. It's always been like that because there's never been a bona fide superstar other than Brett Hull and Wayne Gretzky for 25 games, and that's it. There hasn't been anyone else that has stood out better than that. So they have to play for each other, and that's the only way they win is if they play for each other, and they're doing it this year. And they've been doing it since the Four Nations tournament. So
I was going to say before then, they didn't really seem like they were really even at the beginning of the season in the middle part, it seemed like they were still like that defeated team a little bit as the season kind of started, and they got better at whenever Montgomery came into the mix. But you kind of saw it a little bit after like that new coach high kind of dropped off a little bit, but it wasn't really until after like that 2-week break from the Four Nations face-off where you saw the team really come together and start really playing for each other and playing to get the wins and playing for some sort of tenacity in their level of game. And I feel like in a way they needed a little bit of a break to really dissect everything and really figure out where the things were that they needed to change. And once they figured out those things, the level of play has been so much better. Their penalty kill has been so much better. Their power play has been so much better. And arguably their level of play, I would almost put them in probably the top 5 teams in the league since the Four Nations face-off has ended in resuming play of the regular season. They've gotten the most amount of points since in the last 15 games of the season since everything's resumed, and their 5-on-5 is where everything's really been coming together, and where teams, when you have dangerous teams on 5-on-5, not just in their penalty kill or their power play, you see those teams excel, and we're seeing it currently. The Blues are on a 6-game winning streak, the first time this season, and one of 25 other times that this team has ever done this in their history. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how things kind of come out.
Right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I know we said we were going to kind of go over things from previous games, and we went right into the standings, but over this past week, we saw wins from Chicago, Nashville today. We had Vancouver's overtime win, Nashville win on Tuesday. And like I said just a little bit ago, they're on a 6-game winning streak. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. And we are currently sitting at 81 points in the regular season, 4 back of Minnesota Wild, and then 4 up from the Calgary Flames in standings. This upcoming week, we have the Montreal Canadiens on Tuesday. We have we have the Nashville Predators on Thursday. And then the last game of this week upcoming, we have Colorado Avalanche on Saturday. Now, obviously, Montreal Canadiens and the Colorado Avalanche are going to be pretty big games. Both of those teams are doing pretty well in their seasons. Colorado and Montreal are both sitting in playoff spots. Nashville's kind of just at the little bit of the bottom of the standings, but that's the team that's kind of like what you said earlier. They're at the bottom of the standings. They realize what the position they're in now. They're just one of those teams that's just trying to ruin one of these teams that's in the playoff pictures night whenever they come into their building or whenever they're going into somebody else's building. And as we saw tonight, for the first period and a half, it wasn't that easy of a game against Nashville. I mean, they had their chances at getting goals, and Bennington was doing what Bennington does and have a stellar game for the first period and a half of the hockey game. And so, I mean, really all three games this upcoming week aren't going to be easy games for the Blues, especially that Nashville Predators game. But, I mean, you have Colorado, who's doing really good right now. They're in the last 10 for them. They are 8-1-1, and they're on a 2-game winning streak. And then we have the Canadians, who are they are 5-1-4 in their last 10. So I mean, and they got 2 overtime losses in the last 2 games. So I mean, both teams right now are firing on all cylinders, trying to stay in that those playoff spots. And Montreal's just in a wild card spot, so they really got to keep up what they got going on, because the Rangers are right behind them by 1 point. So if they're wanting to stay in the playoff picture, they're going to have to keep getting wins just like the Blues are.
Yeah. Took the words out of my mouth with Montreal, because I knew the Rangers are getting up there. And so the similar position the Blues are. Like, they've got a spot, but it's not a guarantee, Just like, you mentioned we've got 81 points, and Blues are only 4 points away from Minnesota. Who's to say they don't overtake Minnesota if they keep this going?
Yep.
Minnesota's been kind of on a downward spiral recently with a lot of injuries, and, their overall play has not been stellar. So it's hard for them. But, going back to Montreal, that's a good, hardworking team with, trying to get themselves in there. And, of course, the Avalanche are the, probably playing the best. Next to the Blues, are playing some of the best hockey in the NHL right now. And you've got probably, Nathan MacKinnon is pushing to have that back-to-back MVP year. He might do it because he's playing some astronomical hockey. And, I know that I heard something that their captain, Gabriel Landeskog, might come back shortly. He's been gone for like the last 2 seasons. But
2 or 3 seasons, I think.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of skating with the team, and some people are saying the rumor that he's going to be coming out maybe this week at the earliest. So, if he comes back for that Blues game, that's a lot of, nothing.
Yeah, that would be big for Colorado.
That's a big heart and soul guy that comes back to your team just in time for the playoffs. That's saying a lot. So this, like you said, Brandon, this will not be easy. And, when you play the Predators again, like, it's hard to play a team multiple times in the last few weeks and keep winning, because you saw today they were chipping away. Like, this could have been a game that the Blues could have lost, and they did come out and dominated the third period. But who's to say come Thursday it could be a different story.
Yeah, and that game is gonna be in Nashville. It's not gonna be here in St. Louis. So we've taken. Then again, the game that we had last week against Nashville on Tuesday, I think it was. Yeah, in Nashville, that was the first time that I saw a stat that they brought up during the telecast on Tuesday, that was the first time that the Blues had won in Nashville at Bridgestone Arena since 2020, since 2022. So that is, just to see that happen, and then it's going to be, I think, a lot more of a harder game of this upcoming Thursday in Nashville than we probably saw last Tuesday or tonight. So it's going to be, because I have a feeling they're going to come out and going to be trying to get a win against the Blues, just like they were trying to do tonight. And it's, as much as it's seemed like an easy night tonight. I think it's going to be a lot harder of a matchup come Tuesday.
Agreed. It's
or Thursday. Sorry.
Yep. It's going to be a challenge, no matter what. But so far this team has shown a lot of resolve, and despite those challenges, they've overcome all of them, and that's why we're sitting in the spot we are right now. So you could easily say they could lose these 3 games. They could go on a losing streak, which suck, but their tenacity, they could easily pull off all 3. So I don't know what the cards hold for them. So it's good, but it's exciting.
Now, let me ask you this question: with where the standings are at currently, right now, if the playoff or the regular season were to come to an end, we would be playing against the Winnipeg Jets. Now, like how we were just talking a little bit ago with being 4 points outside of Minnesota for that first wild card spot, and if you get into that spot, you get into the mix with possibly playing against the Vegas Golden Knights, which I believe they've also been on a little bit of a kick recently. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10, and they're on a 2-game winning streak, but they've had a lot better of a season than both us and Minnesota Wild, and they're sitting at 90 points currently at the top of the Pacific. And I don't know what the season series has been like for Vegas and the Blues, but I imagine it's been leading more towards Vegas. But I think all the games that we played against Vegas have been prior to the Four Nations. So I don't know if we would do better against them now, or I can't remember exactly how we did in the regular season against them prior to. So I will think that right now would be a better matchup with Winnipeg, but I don't exactly know how they would do against Vegas since they've gone on this run that we've been in.
I do know that the 2 games that I can recall, the 2 games earlier this where the Blues won, they won in Vegas, and 2 days later they come back to St. Louis because I went to that game and they lost.
That's right.
So again, Vegas, you never know with Vegas. Vegas is a really good team. And if, you got Jack Eichel and Mark Stone playing the way they do, then that's a tough team to play against. It's not just them. You got Pietrangelo, and you got, their defense is ridiculously stacked. And Aiden Hill is a great goaltender for them. Helped win them a Stanley Cup just a few years ago. So it's a tough choice. You want to get it up. You want to get up as high as you can in the standings. But sometimes you gotta watch it. If you're biting you're biting the hand that feeds you in the same place. It's
right.
I know Winnipeg has a long track record of great in the regular season, bad in the playoffs, and who's to say that isn't going to happen again? Especially when you're going against a team, like say the Blues or say, Calgary, if they come in there and tear it up to get those last 2 playoff spots. So, I guess it's just a matter of like how hungry are those top teams going to be once the playoffs start? Because once you're locked into a spot, you relax, you get a little lackadaisical, you rest your guys, you're not so worried about things. But then once the playoffs begin, usually those teams at the bottom that have been fighting so long to get in that spot, they're the hungrier team. So, it's real hard to say what's going to be an advantage for the Blues if they make the playoff, and what position are they going to be?
Yeah, because I just found it a little bit. So they had 3 games so far against Winnipeg and 3 games so far against Vegas. Obviously, we don't play either. Do we? I don't think we play against either team anymore in the rest of we don't play either team in the remaining rest of the regular season. But we had a 1-2 record against Vegas, and that was in the first third of the season. And then we've had 3 games against Winnipeg, which was a 1-1-1 record against Winnipeg. And that
overtime loss was right after. Was either right after the Four Nations or just?
It that first game coming back from the Four Nations, and that was the overtime shootout loss that they had. And I think that was arguably that game could have gone either way for St. Louis or Winnipeg, because that was one of the first few games that they came back for, and they were playing lights out for in that game, and they were playing really well. It's just Winnipeg had just
that they were really good.
Yeah.
So, it again, like they held their own decently against Winnipeg. Then now since then the Blues have gone on their tear. So if they draw Winnipeg, I'd be worried about. If I was Winnipeg, I'd be worried if they drew the Blues. If I was Vegas, I'd be worried too, because it's different when you see teams over and over again. Like I said about Nashville, it changes your style of game against them. It gets chippier, it gets a lot tougher. But if you haven't seen a team, if you haven't played against a certain team in, like, say, a month or two, and then you meet them in the playoffs, that's a different mindset. And like you said, they played Vegas the first third of the season. Like, they have not seen Vegas since I believe January, and they haven't seen Winnipeg since February. And that's by the time the playoffs start, that's 2-3 months. That's a big change in what happens.
Yeah, so the last time that we saw Vegas was January 23rd, and then February 22nd for Winnipeg. So, I mean, it's been a month or two for either one of those teams. And who's to say if we do draw Winnipeg, if we do make it in the playoffs, who's to say that Hellebuyck might have little bad flashback moments to the Four Nations with the goalie matchup against Bennington.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to put goalie to goalie, my money's on Benner, man. That's there's only maybe two other goaltenders that in the Western Conference that I would compare to Bennington in terms of being a playoff stealer, but I still think Benner is the one that you get him in the playoffs. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, anytime he's been in a do or die type situation, it always seems like he's got that extra gear. Just like any team that once they get into the playoffs and they make good runs, it's always those teams that have that somewhat of another gear to get into. Once they are in those types of games or those types of moments, they always dial it in that much more, so that way that they can come out victorious. And we saw that in the Four Nations. We've seen that in the several years that the Blues and Bennington have been in the playoffs. And I mean, we've seen it probably in the last 15 games of this season where Bennington and Hofer have been both lights out for this team. And I think going into the playoffs too is just, I don't think you're going to have to solely get on the back of Bennington for the playoffs if they make it into the playoffs, because Hofer's been showing that he can roll with these teams, that even in those harder grit games that you're going to be playing against the harder teams, he's shown it a little bit too, that he can stick up to these guys and make the crucial saves that he needs to make in dire situations. So it's going to be better, I feel like, this time around, because Bennington knows that he's not going to always have to. Obviously, he's going to put in the 100% whenever he has to, but he's not going to have to be probably in there every single night of the rest of the season like he's had to in the past, because he knows that he has Hofer there to back him up.
Right. I mean, it's a testament to. I mean, it means the world if you're the top goaltender on your team, but you have your backup, you're basically your compadre, the Tonto to your Lone Ranger, but you have that guy that, if I could take Bennington can be like, all right, I need a couple days rest, need a couple games off, and they see that, and Hofer comes in and he plays beautiful, stopping it left or right. Other than one flub game that he had, Hofer and Bennington both, like, they've had, just since the Four Nations, they've had a couple, some meh games, but just a couple. Otherwise, they have been dominant. And that gives you a lot of hope because then, like I said, Hofer could take some of these extra games off of Bennington's back so that while they're in the middle of trying to hold on to this playoff spot, they don't have to worry about Bennington getting tired of playing the next, 10, 11 games. Like Hofer's probably gonna end up seeing at least 4 out of the next 11 to 10 they have left.
Yep, I
It's
could see it. I mean, because
you
I
never know.
think we have one back-to-back matchup remaining. Almost the rest of the games throughout the rest of the season are probably going to be every other day or maybe like 1 or 2 days in between.
Yeah.
But I think they have one more matchup where they are back to back because they had a lot of back to back matchups in the last third of the season.
Yeah, it's been really this. That's I would say that's the disadvantage to the Four Nations break is that just pounding of games at the end for a lot of these teams.
Yep. And because let's see, 7, 29, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, 15. Yeah, it's from here on, it's every other day. So, I mean, and they got a couple of teams in there that are going to be challenging opponents. I know you got Edmonton in there. You got Winnipeg again, Colorado for a couple matchups. Detroit's in there. Pittsburgh is in there. So it's yes, I said earlier that they have a little bit of an easier schedule than some of the other teams that are in the race for the Central, but you also have some of the playoff caliber teams that are in there as well, and it's going to definitely be a stretch run for this team if they're wanting to make it in the playoffs. But I mean, at this point, the future is in their hands. If they want to make it, then they're in the position. And a lot of people, if you would have asked them before the Four Nations face-off, they probably would have told you that the Blues weren't going to be able to make it, that they should have sold off. And, I mean, look at where the team is now, and they've made up massive ground in just the 15 games of being back into the regular season. So, it's going to be interesting to see where this team can go in the last 10-ish games of the regular season to see if they can make it into the playoffs. But do you have anything before we close out for the night, James?
I just want to say one thing, and that's it, besides Go Blues, but I want to give a big shout out to our hometown hero, Pat Maroon, who announced his retirement in yesterday's game against playing for the Blackhawks against the Blues. He announced his retirement, and kudos to him. He brought one of the best memories in Blues history, like best goals ever, like truly one of the best moments for this team and this city. He's already said he's going to be a Blues fan as soon as he's done. Like he's coming back here, being with his family. Probably see him at practices, I'm sure. But he's an all-around amazing hockey player and an all-around amazing guy. So I wish him the best on his retirement. So it's going to suck not to see the big rig out there with that smile and that beard and that great intensity. But because 5 years ago when he came to the Blues, his career was just about done.
Yeah, he seemed like he was on the downhill stretch, or at least on the last little bit of stretch of his career, because I don't think he had really seen or gotten really much out of his career before he came to St. Louis, and once he was there, I think it all changed for him. Once he was able to come back to his hometown and did what he did, and even after he left and being able to do what he did with Tampa Bay and everybody else that he got to play with.
But yeah, like really, congratulations, Big Rig. We're gonna miss you out there, no matter what. But good luck in the next adventure.
Of course. Well, as we said, we had 3 games upcoming this week: Colorado, Nashville, and then we have Montreal as well. We will be back on Sunday. I know we said that the last time, but we are going to be back to doing a regular schedule.
I hope we're smiling. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Smiles next week. That's what I'm gunning for next week is we're all smiles. So
exactly. Keeping up this good level of play like we have been so far for the last couple of weeks. And one thing I also didn't realize that like coming into the wild card race, that out of the 5 teams, 2 of which Minnesota is all those teams have minus differentials.
yeah,
Aside from the Blues. The Blues are the only team in the Central or in the Western Conference
yeah,
in the wild card race that is a plus differential.
yeah. What's
That is
their right now? Because last time I saw it was at a 0, but that was last week.
it's a plus 10.
That's insane. It was 0 last week, Brandon. 0.
Yeah. Minnesota is at a -1. Calgary is at a -21. Vancouver is at a -17, and Utah is at a -9. I meant to bring something up about it earlier, but I completely forgot, and I just looked at it before I was on close it out, and I was like, "Oh, I should probably bring this up." But yeah, that's crazy to think about.
That's telltale sign of what teams are really playing their A game and which ones are not. So,
Yep.
see what happens. Let's hope that continues.
Yeah, for sure. So, thank you guys. If you guys clued in for any bit of the stream tonight, please like and comment. If you guys would like to comment below on what some of the different topics that you guys like us to bring up in future shows, that would be great. But please like, subscribe, comment to the STL Sports channel, and we would be happy to have all you guys on and be clued in with what's going on with St. Louis Blues and all the other St. Louis sports throughout the city. So thank you guys again for the coming and joining us tonight on the stream and then on this episode of the Blues Notes. We will see you guys in the next episode. See ya.
Go Blues.